Today I'm going to talk about the myth that people who failed to take part in murders, the SS or the police battalions, that if they didn't do this, then they would be condemned to death. This is an excuse that's often used, and as I hope I can demonstrate in this video, this is something which is not true. Having said that, at the beginning, I need to point out that the Nazi system of justice was extremely brutal. We know of at least 18,000 German soldiers who were shot during the Second World War for desertion. And to put this into context, in the British Army, there wasn't a single one, it wasn't anybody, and in the American Army, there's the only case that I know of is that of Eddie Slovic, about whom a film was later made. Other than that really, I think, does put in context. Also, of course, needs to be pointed out that in the Red Army, the numbers were also very horrific. You're looking, just taking the Battle of Stalingrad alone, you're looking at really thousands and thousands of people who were shot for desertion. Now, to put this word desertion into some context, because quite a lot's known about it from what happened in the British Army in the First World War. Above all, often people who were shot, we know this, they could have been because they suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder or from something else. Of course, many in the British Army, they were later, not everybody was sentenced to death would end up being shot. I have actually a story from the Second World War, which I think is pretty horrific, and it shows how broken down the system was. In April 1945, according to the name of the author of the memoir, I've forgotten his name, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he was a colonel, and he sent someone back to get a vehicle fixed at a workshop that was behind the front. Now, the vehicle then didn't come back. It didn't. So he sent someone else to find out what had happened. And it turned out that the staff sergeant, who was highly decorated, he had the Iron Cross. He'd gone through the entire war, mainly on the Eastern Front, and he had been hanged by a group of roving SS who went round looking for deserters, and didn't believe his story, even though I'm sure the vehicle was there and they could have seen it. This is the sort of thing that was happening at the end of the Second World War. There's no doubt about the utter brutality, but the thing is this, is that people who were involved in the murder apparatus of the Third Reich could leave it. So here we have to draw this distinction between those who deserted or those who didn't want to join up, because we've even got the cases like that, people who wouldn't join the military. And bear in mind, those who had to join the military had to swear an oath to Hitler. They might have wanted to swear the oath to Hitler, and that in itself could be considered desertion and could end up with a death sentence. But those who didn't actually want to get involved in the killing process. Now, under German law, there's something which is called a putative state of emergency. And that is when people commit a crime because of an emergency situation. And I think this is somewhat similar to that of crimes being committed by using superior orders as the excuse. Now, the thing is, under no law that I'm aware of can you claim that somebody ordered you to commit a crime, and that's if not, for example, in the mafia, anything that the mafia did wouldn't be punishable, because you can always say, oh well, I was ordered by my capo or capo regime or whoever it may be to commit the crime, and therefore I committed it. Or you might say, okay, well, that's unfair because mafia is a criminal organization. So how about in the case anything related to soldiers committing crimes? And in that case, you're going to put the blame all the way up to the top, and the people at the top will say, well, we didn't do anything. And it's often said by the those on the right, but Hitler never killed anybody. Okay, he certainly didn't kill them himself, but he certainly ordered lots of people to actually go about doing it. Indeed, I think it was Elon Musk only 2, 3 weeks ago, he posted something on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, and he claimed that it was the Hitler and Stalin never actually murdered anybody. It was their the civil servants under them that actually did the killing. So he's putting forward this argument that it's he's turning it back around. Indeed, Himmler himself said when after he'd been captured and he was confronted with the murders that had taken place. Oh well, people under my command might have taken the law into their own hands. That was clearly his line of defence that he was going to work on, I presume, had it actually come to that. So as far as the putative argument's concerned, in the Treblinka trial in the mid-60s in Germany, there were 8 people who were accused, and 7 of them successfully used the argument that an emergency situation actually existed. This meant to say that only 1 of the 8 was put on trial. That was Josef Oberhauser. He was the driver of Christian Wirth. He himself had participated in killings. He had been involved in Belgium. He'd taken part in killings, and indeed taking people off the train, forcing people off the trains there. And because he was voluntarily at Belgium and other places, he was considered to be, he had a choice. But the other 7, they got away with it. Well, not all of them got away with it, because 5 of them were then put on trial for crimes committed at Sobibor. So only 2 of them actually got away with it. But on the subject of death camps, I'll bring another thing. Now, Toivo Blatt, who he was in Sobibor, as he was taken there at the end of April 1943 from his home in Izbica, Lubelska, and spent 6 months in Sobibor before escaping in October 1943. I lived with him both in Poland and in the United States. And he told me of a member of the SS staff at the Sobibor death camp who clearly had had enough, and he didn't want to be involved there anyway. Now, he wasn't involved in killing, but he knew perfectly well what was going on there. And he even said goodbye and shook hands with some of the prisoners who were there. So he was somebody that happened, that somebody could just walk away and leave it. Now, there are examples even of the Einsatz commandos who resigned. Now, the Einsatz commandos were put together. Initially, in fact, there was Einsatz commandos used in the invasion of Poland in September 1939, also in the invasion of the Balkans in April 1941 and Greece, but best known, of course, for the mass murders that they committed in the Soviet Union. And what happened as far as they were concerned is that they started to gather at the end of April 1941 on Dieben Heath near Prech, not so far from Leipzig. And so they were gathering there, they were doing training together, they were having comradely evenings and this type of thing, perhaps learning about how Soviet arms worked. And then they were set loose on the population initially of those territories which had been occupied by the Soviet Union. One of these persons was called Erwin Schultz, and he was the commanding officer of Einsatz Kommando 5, which was part of Einsatzgruppe C. And so Einsatzgruppe C was used in the southern part of southeastern part of occupied Poland, and then into Ukraine. And he did take part in massacres on his way to Zhytomyr. Now, Zhytomyr is about halfway, I suppose, between where the Polish border had been and Kyiv is, something like that. And so he'd taken part, but when he got there, he said he didn't want to have anything more to do with this shooting. He was giving up, and that was it. He wasn't going to do it anymore. And as a result, asked for a transfer, and he got his old job back. Previously, he had been the Führerschule den Sicherheitspolizei in Berlin. So he not only did he get it back there, but he was even promoted to SS Oberführer on the 9th of November 1941. He made it as far as SS Brigadeführer and Generalmajor der Polizei on the 9th of November 1943. So it certainly didn't harm his career. That's perhaps the highest ranking one I've got, but I've got one or two others as well. Matthias Graf was a corporal, Unterscharführer in Einsatzkommando 6. And so he was promoted to Scharführer, so like a sergeant approximately, in October 1942. Now, he was assigned in September of 42 to be in charge of a subcommando of Einsatzkommando 6, but he refused to do it. He said he wasn't going to do any more killing. And he was actually arrested. He was placed in custody, but he was released after a few days, and nothing further happened to him. He was sent back to Germany in October of 1942. But the best example of all, and for those who have a premium membership, I've got a video about this character, is Nicholas Hornig. He was an officer in a police battalion. Now, the police battalion has got sort of well known because I think largely of Christopher Browning's book, Ordinary Men. In Christopher Browning's book on Ordinary Men, you've got a Major Trapp who was born in September 1889, and he was in the Lublin area in the summer of 1942. Now, at that time, people who lived near railway stations were sent to death camps. So if you were Jewish and you lived near a railway station, you'd be loaded onto from your ghetto, you'd be put on a train, and then you'd be sent to either Treblinka or Belzec or Sobibor. But those Jewish people who didn't live near a railway station, these isolated communities were destroyed by shooting. So you got the police battalions above all that did it. And in one place in the summer of 42, Major Trapp at Josefov, he said he had been given an order. He had to murder the Jews of Josefov, and but he gave people the chance. First of all, he said he'd had been given this order. Anybody who didn't want to do it could step out. They didn't have to do the killing. They'd be assigned to something else, and nothing would happen to them. Not only that, as the killing actually progressed, more and more people stepped out. They didn't want to do it any longer, and so they also were assigned to other duties. So it seems by the end of the day, at the beginning there weren't many had stepped out, but by the end of the day there were a lot of people who'd stepped out and refused to actually do the killing. Now, the thing which is strange about this Police Battalion 101 was it came from Hamburg, which was an area above all associated with the Communist Party in prior to 1933. The people in it had an average age, I think, was 44 years old, and people who were in police battalions were largely those who were not physically fit enough to be in the army. So that's why they ended up in police battalions. The thing is, the police battalions themselves, their job effectively was ending up fighting in one way or the other. So they had to they could be used then, for example, in largely in those areas of the Soviet Union, the fighting partisans and the likes, but and indeed later in Poland and Yugoslavia. But in this case, they're being used as a part of the Holocaust. They're being a weapon of the SS. Now, Hornig was somebody who had been opposed to the Nazis, it would seem, before, but anyway, like many people have been, they eventually then they sort of ended up accepting the system. And the Nazi system indeed was to a certain extent forgiving of people who had been communist or believed in the democratic parties, and then it took them in. In mid-October of 1941, Hornig was ordered to the general government, and he had to work with Police Battalion 306. And in September Earlier, SS Gruppenführer Kurt de Luger had ordered this unit to shoot Soviet prisoners of war, which were collected in the area. There were huge POW camps in this area. And at the end of October 41, Hornig got an order like this. So he was the platoon commander of the 2nd Company and the battalion, and he had to murder 780 prisoners of war of the Red Army. He was supposed to take them out to a forest near Zamość, and these people had been chosen in the POW camps as either being commissars, that's to say political officers, or they'd been chosen as being Jewish, and there they were to be shot. Anyway, Hornig said he reported this to his commanding officer, Ernst Dreyer, and he refused to do it because he said it contradicted international law. Also, Section 47 of the Military Penal Code, the execution of a criminal order is expressly forbidden. And he also did something unusual. He asked for a disciplinary investigation to be carried out against himself in order to get a legal opinion. Now, this does suggest that Hornig had some legal background, otherwise he mightn't have been aware of that. But he was quoting the Military Penal Code. Now, in the German Army paybook, it actually states very clearly that the commission of crimes is below that of the dignity expected of a German soldier. Now, I've got here in front of me the Military Penal Code. If a criminal law is violated by the execution of an order in official matters, the superior issuing the order is solely responsible for this. However, the subordinate who obeys is subject to the participant's punishment if he was aware that the superior's order concerned an act which aimed at a general or military crime or misdemeanor. And that goes back to the 19th century. So that is to say that if you are ordered to commit a crime, the commander who made the order is responsible, but you are also responsible if you're the one that carries it out. Now, in the case of Hornig, his superior officer did, I think, what everybody in this situation probably would have done, and that's just to play it down. And he got a report that he needs to acquire the necessary toughness for deployment in the East, but in time he'll learn to carry out such orders. And as far as this order was concerned, he could discuss it with SS Untersturmführer Mayet, the leader of police cavalry patrol in the battalion, and he would probably take care of it. Hornig met Mayet in Zamość, and he told him that he wouldn't carry out illegal orders. And Hornig also assembled his own platoon, explained to the policemen under him why he refused to take part in such shootings, and he cited to them Section 47 of the Military Criminal Code, pointing out that every subordinate had the obligation to refuse an order that was criminal. And the thing was this, he even went further, because he tried to get his men not to do it themselves, and he said that this is what the communists did. They murdered people, and that was illegal. And so this was also made further more difficult because Hornig was on the court-martial staff of his unit, so that he was one of those who had to take part in punishing people for doing things, I don't know, getting drunk or looting or whatever else they might have done, which was wrong. In Hornig's case, he was suspended for duty, and after 3 months, he was accused of having undermined military strength. Now, this is a term which is often used for the use of death sentences, was often used for the use of death sentences, the undermining of military strength. This is what lots of people were accused of, and that did carry the death penalty. And the reason why he was accused of it was not because he refused to do it himself, but because he'd encouraged others not to do it. But this then went to court, and now he was accused not of failing to carry out the killings, and it was accepted that Section 47, the Military Criminal Code, existed, and in this case he was right, but because he had accused the SS of using communist methodology, that was sufficient to have him locked up in Dusseldorf police prison. And so he was there from May 42 until 6 months later he got his an indictment, and that he was charged with, and I shall quote, in November 1941, he undertook to undermine discipline in the German Wehrmacht and arouse disaffection in relation to service amongst his comrades, as well as an anti-SS and anti-police attitude expressed through speech and behavior. But as we see, it doesn't refer to his refusal. It's now referring to the way he's interpreting the refusal. So he was transferred to the police prison in Kassel, and so they went before the Kassel SS and police court in May 1943. The prosecution requested 5 years in prison. He got 2.5 years in prison. The verdict had to be confirmed by none other than Heinrich Himmler, and for that Hornig was sent back to Frankfurt. There he spoke to SS Gruppenführer Franz Breithaupt. He was in charge of the SS punishment legal department, I think, so probably the best way of putting it. If you saw my videos on Danzig Matzgau, I did a little bit on him there. He got there from Breithaupt the right to a retrial, but someone in the meantime found out he'd been listening to foreign radio stations, and that was now far more serious crime as far as they were concerned. He was sent to a police prison in Mainz, and from there he was sent to Buchenwald. And now in Buchenwald, he was put on trial again, and he this time sentenced to 5 years and 7 months for undermining military force and military disobedience. And he was ordered to stay in the concentration camp, and he stayed there until American troops turned up on the 11th of April 1945 and liberated him. However, it needs to be pointed out very clearly that he was in Buchenwald not because he refused to kill people, but because he was listening to foreign radio broadcasts. Now, you may say, well, this was just the excuse that they used. They really wanted to punish him for not killing people, but people could even be executed for listening to foreign radio broadcasts. Now, he later appeared in a number of trials in the 60s and 70s, and he said the following: it was not true that a police member ran the risk of being sentenced to death and also executed within the framework of the special SS and police jurisdiction, refusing a criminal order, as was repeatedly claimed by perpetrators in the trials. And now it, of course, needs to be pointed out that not everybody was aware of the law, and not every, like same as people don't read the terms and conditions of things when they buy them. And but they may not have realized that they absolutely did have the right of refusal. They didn't have to do these things if they didn't want to. Now, what is strange, of course, is if you look at what most of these Einsatzgruppen commanders were, is what? They were lawyers. And to be quite honest, they should have known. Therefore, people like Martin Sandberger, whom I did a video on 4 years ago, Sandberger, a lawyer, was sentenced to death, and then he got away with it. He lived in an old people's home in Stuttgart until 2010, I think he died, wasn't it? June 2010, I think it was, he died. And so I mean, there's absolutely, he did it because he wanted to. Same as Ohlendorf, he did it because he wanted to. The Rash, I mentioned yesterday, lawyers, they should have known what the law was. There's no reason for somebody like Hornig to know what the law was. Anyway, this excuse can't be held to be a reason, as it was in many criminal trials after the war. Right, I'll have a look. That's a large, larger. There are about 100 cases. I tried counting them once. But the ones that I found that refused to carry out criminal orders. So that's something. that one could have a look at. Right, I'll have a look at some of the points here. So hello to Craig, Mike, Eva, Annie, and right. So John's mentioned the book Hitler's Willing Executioners by Daniel Goldhagen. Daniel Goldhagen used exactly the same material as did Christopher Browning. It's also been used by a German author who is a professor in Hamburg. His name I've forgotten, but I don't think we'll come back when I finish speaking, but I've told you he's a professor at Hamburg and he was born in 1966. But anyway, he has also used the same material. The material is available. One of the problems is with Christopher Browning's book is, except for 4 people, he has used pseudonyms, which has caused, well, I bet it's caused other people problems. It's caused me problems when I'm trying to identify somebody, and I thought I had identified somebody, and I don't know if I have or I haven't. Now, the thing is this, that pseudonyms have to be used in many cases, because if you get documents, often the names are blacked out under German privacy laws. And sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But then if you get the same documents or similar documents, which can be found, for example, in Poland in archives, and the names are not blacked out, the problem here is that you might actually make a mistake and accuse somebody of doing something they didn't do. So this does lead to confusion at times. Good. I think that's about it then. I could actually have a quick look at some things from yesterday. No, I think I'll start doing that tomorrow. I'll start looking at the previous day's comments that were put up. So that's it. I'll do another one of these tomorrow. I don't know what the theme will be. I'll think of it then. What I did today, incidentally, was write up things from yesterday, because I said this about the Baba Yar and the responsibility of the Wehrmacht for it. And today I was sitting in front of the communications that were going back between the Wehrmacht and Berlin relating to the advance on Kiev in the summer of 1941, to see if what else might be able to understand from it. And to a certain extent, I think I've confirmed my change of mind that I had yesterday afternoon. I suppose in time I'll get around to doing a video on that. John writes, Goldhagen's book got more bad reviews than good, but John thought it was quite good. I don't think there's anything all that wrong with. I disagree with Goldhagen's theory, because his theory is the following. In Hitler's Willing Executioners, he seems to think there's something inherently wrong, inherently bad about German people, which was cured after the Second World War. So he makes that quite clear that he doesn't think it's the case any longer. I have a video which hasn't been published yet, and where I quote Goldhagen on the Kurt Franz when he was released from prison, and so there he really does have a go, and that was done in the 1990s. And something he published, and it was published in the New York Times. The Christopher Browning takes a completely different attitude to it, and yeah. So Michael here writes, it's absurd to suggest it was inherent in Germans and miraculously exited their souls post-war. Yeah, well, I'm just quoting it's not my theory. It's I'm just quoting what Daniel Goldhagen said, and also I might be misinterpreting, but that's my the way I actually look at it. And so the anyway, so I think that I take the attitude that this is something that could have happened anywhere, and if you take the more to the point is why so many people actually went along with it. And that is more the question. I think that the beginning in Germany, the legal process stayed in place, as you can see from this when I talked about Mr. Hornig here, is that the legal framework stayed there. They didn't destroy it. Not only that, there's this difference between what Nazis did and the communists did, because the Nazis acted against the law. German law, whereas the communists in shooting, for example, escapees, that was legal under East German law. So that makes prosecution of East German criminals far more difficult from a legal point of view. And so the Nazis never legalized anything. The euthanasia, so-called euthanasia, T4 murders, that wasn't that was never legal. Nor was Holocaust or anything like that. Everything was illegal. And the problem is when the people within the legal framework fail to do anything to uphold the law. It's not, I mean, it hasn't just happened in Nazi Germany. I can think of other countries where, so I'm sure you can, where there've been similar things that people have failed to uphold the law. And another thing, for example, is that if we take Mr. Hornig's example once more, he said that it was about him, he failed to show or he will gain the necessary toughness. Well, I think there's a lot of peer pressure, and the cowards bent to peer pressure, and then they did the crimes, whereas the real courage was shown by those who stood up and they said, no, I'm not doing this, it is wrong. And here's Marco, whom from Marco's name I'm assuming is German, and no one was obligated. My father and paternal grandparents were not involved. I researched about them. Yes, okay, there you go. So I do. There is, I think, the problem here, if anything, it was a lack of courage to actually stand up. But it's very easy for me to say that sitting here where I am right now, when you've got, you had these SA thugs on the streets beating people up and using terrorist methods. It's not a surprise that people buckled under. It's the same like in Russia today. I mean, I've got an incredible amount of admiration for these Russians, particularly women, who are standing up to the thugs that are beating them up, finding out where they live, assaulting them, and this type of thing. And so that is it's very easy. People can talk about surrendering and I don't know what else and what heroism that they would do, but unless it's real, in that situation, you don't actually know. Michael mentioned a book which is very rare. Is Ernst Clay's The Good Old Days. Okay, right. Ernst Clay was, I think, the first writer, if not the first, one of the first writers. I won't say he was the first person that actually went into the Nazi crimes at the end of, and his first book was out in 1946. Indeed, there've been a number of people who were in prison and at the time of the Nuremberg trials, who actually discussed it amongst themselves. So, yeah, that's a good one. The thing I'd like to say about the book by Christopher Browning, it is incredibly easy to read. Of all the books on the Second World War that I'm aware of, I'd have to say that I think that it must come in as the best. Thank you. The best written book on the Second World War that I know of. It's really super easy to read. Daniel Goldhagen's is a bit harder. It's only a little bit harder. I'm not suggesting it's something that's really difficult to read. It's not. But Christopher Browning really does deserve a lot of credit for that. Okay, good. So I think I've said, unless anybody else has got any comments to make. Thank you, Cor. Good. Thank you. And thank you, John. Check that out at the library, and it's very interesting. Thank you. So thanks very much for being here. I'll do something else tomorrow. I need to point out I will uploading now every single day at this time. Only that in the United States, I believe it's not the same time. You've already changed hours. We don't change hours here in Europe until next weekend. But as from next weekend, I think we're all on the same. We're all moving together, so to speak. And every single day, 8 o'clock my time. 7 now because I'm in Britain, but I'm normally in Germany or Poland. So it's 8 o'clock. There'll be something. Now it may be something like this live shot. It may be a sort of a documentary type video. It may be me walking around with a camera and rabbiting on, or it may just be a shorts video, which might only be 45 seconds or 2 minutes or something. But every day there's something. Michael's written, Browning also did superb work on the higher level of machinery of the Holocaust with the final solution on the German Foreign Office, 1978. Thanks, Michael. So Michael said, thanks, you really do. Well, I do my best, Michael. Thank you. John says, high noon on the west coast of America. Yes, it is. Sorry, there's not much I can do. But this was a problem for me when I was living in California, because my business I was in then, I was working in like 15, 16 years ago, I needed to be on times as people worked in Russia. So I had this ridiculous time I had to get up with. And then I worked until it was sort of closing time in the UK. So we had this then, because Russia was on a different time, they changed their times as well. So I had to be on like a 10-hour working day. But what was the good thing was, as my working day was coming to an end, I could go out, and because it was just morning in California. Thank you. So all the best. Thanks for now. Browning was in Tacoma. Yes. Thank you. Bye for now.